Empty the chamber on them. And how do you do that? First 6 seconds, point A to point B, everything you got. Everything you got. Turn that shit up. Let's go. Welcome to the Scoop World Order, returning Band of Brother, getting back together edition. We have some great, fantastic news. Hopefully, we also have some big news on an interview tomorrow we're really excited about. So we have all that. We're going to be taking questions tonight. The portal is popping off. A lot of people visiting, offensive linemen visiting, a quarterback visiting. It is absolutely crazy right now. The portal is the greatest thing ever for BuckeyesScoop.com because the site truly never sleeps because there's always news coming on that. So we're going to get into that. What some key guys returning for their senior or junior years could mean for the Buckeyes and a lot more. So we're going to get into that. We're going to take your questions. Appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, we're thankful and we are grateful for you guys to show up and see us. We thank you so much. You have a lot of options on. I know the Ohio State-Purdue game is ticking down. We wanted to knock this thing out so you guys can put the game on mute, listen to us, talk some football, which is what really drives the bus around Ohio State. That being said, I'm going to bring in my good friend Nevada. Buck, Nevada, how are you tonight?
Doing great. You know, exciting times around Ohio State. Lots of things going on in the portal. We got 57-56 Purdue over Ohio State right now in the second half. So got lots of things popping. We're going to be multitasking here for the next hour or so, and let's get into it.
Yeah, we talking about unfinished business, talking about kind of a reshaping of the coaching staff with Kevin Wilson leaving. He's taken 2 defensive assistants. One is a coordinator, one is a linebacker coach. There's some opportunity there. But one of the main things we're talking about is there's a little bit of a rumble that there's going to be kind of a band of brothers, one last ride type mentality, where there's some guys that are on the fence about declaring for the NFL draft, believe that they could be coming back for one last ride. I think if we get some of these key guys back, some of these on the fence guys back, that will be a top 3 team preseason, regardless of the quarterback situation, just based on the offensive infrastructure, the defensive talent, year 2 of Jim Knowles. Nevada, what are you hearing about that? And kind of enlighten us on what is going on behind the scenes at the Woody Hayes and as these guys are making decisions.
Well, you're always looking. I think this time of year generally falls into 2 categories, which is either everybody's leaving or everybody's staying. And, I think there were some concerns after the Michigan game about the culture at Ohio State, about, what type of situation we were in from a coaching staff standpoint, where our position with our players, how much faith do they have in the schemes, in the development, in the team concept. And everything that I've been hearing lately has been falling towards the thing of people returning and people staying. And I think, as you mentioned, if that happens, that's extremely good news for Ohio State. I think Ohio State's a top team next year, regardless of what happens with early entrants. But with a couple of guys breaking the right way, and we've already had a couple of nice, the guys announced that they're returning, and Ohio State's going to be right at the top of the college football world with very few questions. I mean, some notable ones, notably who's going to be the quarterback. But I mean, Ohio State's going to be right there at the top of the college football world, and I think it's going to be led by this band of brothers that are returning. That they've got unfinished business to take care of after the close Georgia loss, and maybe they come back in 2023 and avenge that and get over the top.
Yeah, I mean, we have some fence guys like Cade, Tommy Eichenberg, guys that are, I can't imagine that their draft grades, their feedback from the NFL process was that great. I actually went through the same process my junior year. It came back with a round 4 grade, which really is kind of a non-starter if you want to go pro. I mean, it's when they say generally when they give you a grade, they say that's about where you'll get drafted. And, I think that with Tommy in the second year of Jim Knowles' system and with Cade being able to get back to health, I think it would be just tremendous for both of them. I think, if Cade, his elbow was dinged really bad. A lot of people were down on him because he dropped a lot of balls, but he was really beat up, bad upper body injuries. Obviously didn't finish the national championship game. So, there's a lot of meat on the bone for what Cade Server can do. And the jump he made from last year to this year was significant. I think that if he stayed for one more year, it would be even more significant, just in terms of rounding out his game. I think that, he showed A lot of improvement in his route running ability. Self-admittedly, he said that multiple times. He really worked hard at his routes. He, frankly, I thought was better than Jeremy Ruckert was his last year. Jeremy's just a little bit taller, a little bit more athletic, and he came in with more stars, 5 stars. So he carried him into the third round, but he didn't exactly light the world on fire so far in the NFL. I think Cade could be a similar type guy, could be a mid-round guy if he came back and had a really productive final year. And again, year two in a defense, I feel like these guys, instead of learning everything, there's a comfort level. I think that Tommy, would be a preseason All-American, so there's always that incentive to come back, get your Buckeye tree, be a two-time captain, add to the resume. And I think he's a guy that would be a contender for major rewards. I think he'd be a Butkus, probably favorite coming back. He was really productive. Surprised he didn't make the cut last year. But those are two guys I think that could really turn the tide. If we, Lathan looks like he's coming back. We got Chop Williams coming back. I mean, those are like adding 5-star recruits to your recruiting class. So then if we can close on a few of these transfer portal guys, Jarrett Kingston, the left tackle from Washington State. There's some other offensive linemen rumored to be visiting. If we get one of those guys, and you look at the O line, and we're right in it. That's the thing is everybody, they're really concerned about the offensive line, but with Justin Fry, taking more of a lead and calling the offense with Brian Hartline, I think you can gin up the pass protection. If you have a weak link potentially, you can help them out a little bit. And our skill is going to be the best in the country with Trey Henderson, Mayan, Marvin Emeka. You get these freshmen, Brandon Ennis, Carnell Tate. I don't worry at all about scoring points on offense, and I think our defense will be just as good, if not better, in year two. And with all of the super sophomores becoming super juniors and becoming starters. Nevada, anything I said there that you disagree with or agree with, or any other points you want to add to the medley of things I just talked about?
Well, no, just, look, the transfer portal's where it's at right now. I mean, Notre Dame just got Sam Hartman, the transfer from Wake Forest. So, they're going to be better next year. That matters to us just because we're playing on the road, in South Bend. But look, guys are coming and going. We're in the middle of this transfer portal this season right now for the winter. There'll be another one after spring football. So there's going to be a lot of new names flashing on and off, and it's going to be interesting to see from a coaching standpoint. Does this coaching staff for Ohio State stay intact through into next season? I mean, look, let's talk Larry Johnson. It's inevitable that Larry retires. It's just a question of when. Is it this year? Is it next year? Is it 3 years from now? What is it? But he's not going to go on forever. Frankly, I'm surprised we've had him this long, and so that's something that could happen at any time, really. And then you've got Tony Alford. I mean, I think that's kind of an open question right now. Was whether Tony's going to be staying, moving on, or what's he going to be doing at Ohio State? So that could change some things as well. So you've got some coaching question marks that we're looking at. You've got transfer portal, returning entrants. Just got all sorts of influx on the roster, and it's going to be really interesting to try to evaluate these rosters from year to year, because it's not going to be like it used to be in the old days where you could look at a team and see how they recruited one year or how they recruited the next year, and kind of project those guys out to their junior and senior years, because everybody's moving. So for Ohio State, I think we're well positioned. But as you said, the best news of all is getting those guys back. Getting those veterans back for Ohio State is such a huge thing. And Mayan Williams, getting him back, I was kind of met with kind of mild applause from people, and they were kind of excited about it. I'm very excited about getting Mayan Williams back. I think that answers an awful lot of questions for you on running back. And regardless of who else is there, who stays, who transfers, who's hurt, whatever else goes on, you've got Mayan Williams, and you're already starting off the year with not only a running back, but that big running back that you want to have, especially in the Big Ten when the weather gets bad, especially when you're on the goal line and you need those tough yards. I could not be more excited about that news. I won't say that it was unexpected, but it certainly was the furthest thing away from a guaranteed return. And to me, it's just a gigantic piece of news that I don't think people were quite as excited as they should be about that.
Do you think that the excitement gets dulled somewhat because of the portal? I mean, it has to be because, people react with Mine Williams coming back, who's a guy that probably got a late round grade. He's a guy that was dinged up a lot. I think he's a really good running back in college, but he's got to come back and basically run for his career next year. He's got to run hard. He's got to have a productive year. He's got to stay healthy. For a chance to get drafted in the NFL draft the following year. But do you think that the fact that there's some people that believe that Mine coming back could push Evan Pryor to the portal, could push Chip to the portal? Is that part of the reason why it was met with tepid applause?
I think it's the next shiny thing phenomena that you have with a lot of people, where the person that's kind of unknown, the transfer from Washington State, the guy that's buried on the depth chart, the guy that hasn't played yet, the incoming freshman, is always more exciting than the guy that we have in front of us. Even if that guy is a guy like Brian Williams, who's darn good. So I
Mhm.
just think it's just a natural kind of reaction that people have, when the stuff like this happens, that we're, inevitably you'll wonder what the impact's going to be on other guys. And who knows, when you've got Trey Henderson, Ryan Williams, Dallin Hayden, Chip, does Evan Pryor hang around? I hope he does. I think Evan Pryor, I mean, could he end up being the best of the bunch? He might be. But you just don't know. So you got to take the bird in the hand, and the bird in the hand of having Ryan Williams back, from my standpoint, is just a 10-star recruit, and like I said, just a huge piece of the puzzle for Ohio State in 2023. And like I said, very, very, very exciting news.
Yeah, I think Evan Pryor looked great in the spring game, but obviously tore his knee. You don't know how healthy he's going to be going forward. If he's ready to roll into spring, I would imagine he's probably close coming off an ACL with the time frame. Around spring ball, he might be able to roll. But again, it's you got to take the guys that are proven productive players on the team. Regardless of people's feelings or what they were projecting their role would be next year. I just think that's kind of how you have to do it. Nevada, Jared Kingston is a guy you broke that he was coming into town. I think you said he was coming from Cabo or Mexico or somewhere. So he's fresh out of Senior Frogs and right onto campus to visit with Justin Fry. What are you hearing about that one? Obviously he's a West Coast kid. A lot of rumors about USC and UCLA. But again, like if I'm Justin Fry and I'm talking to any of these portal tackles, I'm like, look, we're losing two All-American tackles. They're both going to be drafted. Paris will probably be, if not the first, the second tackle drafted off the board. And then Dewan will probably be a third, fourth round type tackle. But what are you hearing about Jared Kingston? Do we have a shot at landing him to be our left tackle next year?
Well, I think we absolutely have a shot. I think, Jared's kind of an interesting kid because he's always kind of viewed himself as kind of being a Big Ten player, and he's kind of got that Big Ten player mentality. So I think, he views that he fits in well at Ohio State as opposed to a place like USC or UCLA. Now, having said that, it's going to all come down to how this visit goes. And, as we mentioned, he got in late last night around 10:18 p.m. Approximately just a wild guess that he got in around 10:18 p.m. last night. And for Ohio State, they just, they're giving him the dog and point. They're giving him full attention and putting on a good show. Don't really have a read on how that's going yet. We'll know more over here in the next 24, 48 hours. But, they brought him in for a reason. He came in for a reason. And, I always like to get a little bit more information before I get optimistic. But I think he'd be a great fit for Ohio State regardless. But, I'm not as worried about the offensive line as some people are. And one of the questions that I had for folks today was, when was the last time that we had a bad offensive line? When was the last time? And it's kind of hard to remember. It's the same question people ask about the quarterback position. They're like, oh, the quarterback position. And I said, well, when's the last time we had a bad quarterback at Ohio State? And the obvious answer was Joe Bowserman, 2011, but that's 11 years ago. The guy that posted that, I said, you're playing t-ball the last time that we had a bad quarterback at Ohio State. So I think that there's some things you can worry about, some things you don't worry about. I'm not as worried about the offensive. I think the offensive line's in better shape as long as you've got 5, 6, 7 capable guys on the offensive line. I think you're going to be just fine, short of catastrophic injury and bad things happening. would getting portal guys in help? Absolutely. But and I may be one of the few, but I am not at the DEFCON 4. We have nobody to play, and we're going to have to line up long snappers at guard and quarterbacks at center. And I think we're going to be just fine. And I have faith that Justin Fry is going to be able to get it done with the guys that he's got in the room. But it would sure be nice to add some talent from outside the room just to give ourselves a little bit of cushion, a little bit of breathing room.
Yeah, I agree. I don't worry about the offensive line at all. I think with the way you can scheme it up now and the way we can throw the ball and our skill guys, they can carry the offensive line. Again, I watch a ton of NFL football. I watch bad offensive line play every week in the NFL, and somehow by some miracle of God, the quarterback they don't get sacked 35 times a game like people think they will. Like they have this like illusion where it's like, oh my God, we're gonna lose Paris and DeWand and Kyle McCord's going to be in the infirmary getting sacked 35 times a game. I was like, no, it's not how it works. Like the way we get rid of the ball in the quick game and our running game, and the way you can scheme up protections. Like we do a lot of play action protection, a lot of 7-man. I mean, against Georgia, we were running 6 and 7-man protections, and they had the best pass rush in the country. They didn't, they got home I think 4 times, and that was some of the things they ran were just incredibly well schemed, very difficult stuff. But most of the time we just picked it up, especially when we played Mitch Rossi at running back, and Mitch Rossi played maybe one of the best games I've ever seen an Ohio State Buckeye play in terms of pass protection because he was killing their guys, and that guy is an absolute warrior. But I don't buy it. We play in the Big Ten. We're gonna have 3 games before we go to Notre Dame. We have 3 layups, against Youngstown State and Antarctica Tech and some of these other schools, and they'll be ready to go. They'll be tuned up. We don't have to open up at South Bend week 1. So, these guys will get their sea legs under them. They'll kind of figure out who's what, who's where. And again, if you're worried about pass protection at tackle, just know, like, put Donnie Jackson, 74 at left tackle, put Josh Fry at right tackle. Josh started a game this year at right tackle, did great. I mean, he did every bit as good as DeWan did. He's not as big or physically imposing, but he's a much better athlete. He's much smoother. His feet are just as good. And again, it's if you struggle or you're going against some werewolf defensive end or defensive tackle, you can scheme it up. Like, we schemed up Jalen Carter and he had no impact. He had 1 tackle in 4 quarters of football. So I don't worry about the O-line. I know some people like to just worry about everything in life, but of all the things in this life I don't worry about, like Ohio State's offense is literally like at the absolute bottom of the list. It's next to Jeff Bezos being able to afford to go on vacation or being able to afford a Big Mac or Grubhub or something like that. So I just don't worry about Ohio State's offense at all. Nevada, is there any part of the offense that worries you next year?
Well, I mean, look, it's funny because we've talked a lot about the defense and our concerns about the defense and some of the struggles that the defense had in the second half of the 2 big games at the end of the year, and then I look back at the offense and I'm like, man, the offense in the second half of the Michigan game this year scored 3 points, and in the fourth quarter of the Peach Bowl we scored 3 points as well. So it's like but I guess it's just a way of. Am I worried about the offense? No, I'm not worried about the offense at all. I think Ryan Day is at the very pinnacle of offensive minds for college football. I think college football is so dominated by wide receiver play and elite quarterback play. I have no doubt that either Devin Brown or Kyle McCord will be able to get it done. You know, we've talked a lot about that. I think the quarterback derby is just going to be great to watch because, I like Devin Brown because Devin Brown can run around a little bit more. A lot of people like Kyle McCord. His relationship with Marvin Harrison goes back to high school. They were high school teammates together, and he's been in the system, for 2 full years. He's had his sea legs. He's seen a lot of practice time. We just haven't seen a lot of him in the games. But I don't have any doubt that Ryan Day will have a quarterback ready and that we'll be rolling from the quarterback spot. And then, as you mentioned, at tight end, I think Cade's back, or Joel Royer. At wide receiver, would be best in the country, and the running back room is going to be absolutely stout. So, no, I really don't have any concerns about the offense, but I'm very, very excited to see who wins that quarterback derby because, look, you want to see somebody's going to win, but you also don't want somebody to win in the spring and then all of a sudden in the fall that guy leaves, and now all of a sudden we've got one quarterback. So Ryan Day's got to play this very, very carefully, and I'm gonna be fascinated to watch to see how he plays it, how he keeps both guys engaged, and who do we end up with as the starting quarterback for Ohio State next year.
Yeah, and for those of you on YouTube, this is Devin Brown's highlight tape. I'm just watching it. Give you guys a little something to watch. Again, like you look at him putting the foot in the ground. Again, I get it. This is Utah football. This isn't Georgia. This isn't Texas. This is Utah football. But when a guy could do this on the read option, put his foot in the ground, juke a guy, I mean, like I love watching this. Now, again, this guy. This guy isn't Alabama. I get it, but still, that threat is so hard to defend against. He literally makes two guys miss, that are 3 inches away from him. Here he sidesteps a sack, steps up, throws a dart. Again, I love Devin Brown's game. I agree with you to that. I think this could easily be like a Burrow Haskins thing where, the guy who feels like he's the loser at the end of spring takes off, just because I think that's how modern football is going to be. Like if you're not the starter, you're going to go somewhere where you're guaranteed to start, because whoever isn't, in their mind the starter after spring ball is going to be able to go somewhere and start this year. Because I mean, both those guys are going to be starting somewhere, is the way I see it. And I want it, and I want it in ink from everybody. Who do you think should be the starter? I like Devin Brown. Again, they've got 15 practices plus winter conditioning, mat drills, and all that to sort out the leadership and who's the winner. Right now, Kyle McCord obviously was the backup last year. He started a game against Akron 2 years ago. So it's going to be really interesting to see how this shakes out in the spring. Do you go with a guy who is a little bit more mobile, who's a year younger, or do you go with McCord, who's the guy who started a game, who was the primary backup this year? He saw more snaps this year than Devin did. So it's going to be fascinating. It really is. And I think that, you got to know that whatever one you don't give the first, I'd assume Kyle would get the first snap starting spring ball. But whoever doesn't quote unquote win that battle is going to be, likely to hit the portal. So it's going to be interesting to see how Ryan plays this. But I love this kid's ability. I mean, he was the number one overall recruit per On3. Now On3 is almost comical with how they do their ratings, because Quinn Ewers was the overall number one, then he reclassified, and then we take Devin Brown kind of late in the cycle, and they move him up to number one overall, not number one quarterback, number one overall. So, the kid has got talent. He's got Harold. I mean, obviously, he's playing in Utah, so the talent that he's going against isn't exactly like world beater, but you see the throws, you see the speed. It's going to be interesting. And I love quarterbacks that can run. I love guys that can put that fear of God into a defense by being able to take off, scramble. I mean, obviously he's a tough kid. He's fearless. I think he's going to he'd do amazing things in this offense. And again, if you are a little shaky at one of the guard spots or one of the tackle spots or whatever, when you have a guy that can scoot like Devin can, then all of a sudden you're not as worried about it anymore. Because if something happens, he can get out of trouble, scramble around, throw the ball, or take off and run, get some green grass, get it to 2nd and 2 instead of 2nd and 4 by taking a sack, or 2nd and 10 by throwing an incompletion. So I love Devin Brown's game. I think this is going to be, if there's ever a good time to join BuckeyesScoop.com, it's literally when there's a quarterback derby, because every day is like the Super Bowl. So, I mean, you get intel from practice, or like, okay, this guy looked great. This guy didn't look great. And again, coming out of the Joe Burrow, Dwayne Haskins, the 2018 Derby, it was pretty much unanimous that Dwayne Haskins was the guy. And in 2018, he was the guy. He was much better than Joe Burrow in terms of his quarterback play. Obviously, Joe Burrow in 2019 took the limitless pill and became the greatest quarterback in the history of college football, became the number one overall pick. But in 18, there was no question that we made the right move with Haskins, who was also, not only was he better than Joe, but he was also a year younger eligibility-wise. So now, that being said, he left after his redshirt sophomore year, which is something that had never happened in the history of Ohio State at quarterback. But that's kind of what you live with nowadays at the quarterback position. Nevada, defensively, what units do you think need to step up, and what units do you think will be? Are there any of the 3 units that you think will actually be better next year than they were in 2022?
Well, I think the linebackers will be better because Tommy. I think Tommy is coming back. Again, I don't know that, so that's not a call, but I think he's coming back, and Steele is coming back. So already by definition, those guys are going to be back, and there's no reason to believe that they won't take a step forward. And then, from a defensive line standpoint, if you look for who are our four key defensive line, or other than Zach Harrison, who is going to be a loss, Jack Sawyer, Mike Hall, Tyleek, and JT. That's four really good defensive linemen right there. And if we get any kind of improvement out of those guys, you think the defensive line is going to be better. And then you go to the cornerback, the defensive backfield. If Ransom comes back, Hickman will be gone. But it's hard to imagine them being much worse. And we had no interceptions out of the cornerback spot, 0 this year. So it's hard to imagine that we could be worse. And so I look for them to improve as well. I got some fabulous freshmen coming in, some guys that can really play, right from the get go. So no, I think I'm very optimistic about Ohio State. Again, you've got to take a step back and look, what's our spot in the college football world right now? Our spot in the college football world is right there with Georgia. I think we're better than Georgia, personally. I think most people that watch that game would agree with that. So, look, we're right there. Got a team that's improving, and just got to find a quarterback. And I'll take my money and bet it on Ryan Day to find a quarterback. Got two very capable candidates for it, and I can't wait to watch spring ball.
Yeah, I'm really excited about the defense in year 2. I really think there's some major stuff that could be happening with Jim Knowles. I think that now the fact that the super sophomores are basically going to be forced to start, it's not going to be let's rotate in some guys that have been less productive. It's going to be, hey, we're playing the best guys. Like, that's going to be, it'll be interesting to see how a guy like Mike Hall, Tyleek, Jack Sawyer play without the older guys in front of him, because those guys I felt were more productive. I thought they were better players than the older guys, and they didn't get the snaps. And it was one of the most bizarre things I've ever seen, that we had Jack and Mike Hall lead the team in sacks, and they played, I don't know, 15-20% of the snaps compared to the older guys. So that'll be something that'll bear watching to me, because I think that you've got some major movement there. Are you okay? So Buckeyes 66 up with 1 minute to go. I got Gamecast on. I'm sure a lot of you guys are tuned into that with the game on mute, listening to us. So we'll keep you updated on that. Nevada, we also got a safety from Syracuse. I love his name, Jihad. But what do you think of him so far? Again, we've got big needs at safety, especially with Rocket Hickman taking off. Lathan looks like he's back. Then you've got guys like Sonny Styles and Kai Stokes that are kind of nipping at their heels. What do you think of Jihad Carter? Do you think he fits the mold for what Jim Knowles likes to do in the back end?
No, I think he does. But, let's talk a little bit about what Jim Knowles likes to do, because I've heard a lot of discussion about that lately. And it's been kind of interesting where they talk about the Jim Knowles defense like it's some sort of weird defense that nobody's ever seen before. I mean, it's a 4-2-5. So the only thing that's a little bit different is, instead of playing the Will and the Mike and the Sam, he takes a linebacker off the field and he puts in another safety. So it's basically nickel defense. That's what it is. So having a guy like Jihad Carter, who's again a bigger guy, a guy that can hit, a guy that can cover, a guy that can do those little things and help in that nickel defense that Jim Knowles likes to run. Again, I think it's a perfect it's a perfect fill for that. Just whether or not he's better than the guys that we have, I guess we'll find out in the spring. We'll find out in the fall. But that's the kind of guy that you want to have to be able to guard guys in these modern spread offenses that are regularly going 3 and 4 wide guys. You need to have guys that can do it all. You need to have guys that can cover. You need to have guys that can stay in the box and hit guys as well. So that's what I like about Sonny Styles. That's what I like about Kai Stokes. That's what I like about some of the players that we have, kind of the hybrids that we have. But Jihad Carter definitely fits that bill as somebody who can do a little bit of everything. And another guy that I'm not sure if people are as excited as they should be about them, because for me, he was one of the top guys in the portal. I know he was one of OSU's top targets, and they went out and got him. So, lots to be excited about with Jihad.
Yeah, I think he's the portal, like it's just so funny how a spot that's weak can become strong. A spot that's strong can become weak. It is just a whole different world now. And that's why, again, I don't sweat if we don't have tackles or we don't have or we look weak at a position, because we could have 4 really good tackles. And then after spring ball and 2 of them figure out they're not going to be the starters, they could both bolt in the transfer portal. Then all of a sudden you're like, oh man, we had all this depth, and all of a sudden it's all gone. Because that literally happened 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I mean, Ryan Jacoby walked out of here after like 1 week of fall camp. So I mean, it's like, and he went to Pitt. He started games at Pitt the same year that he started August training camp at Ohio State. He started games for the Pitt Panthers literally, 2 months later. So I mean, it's with depth, it's all an illusion at this point to me. There's nothing to it that I never feel comfortable watching the end of this Ohio State game. 57 seconds left, the clock's ticking. But I don't know. Like for me, I think that Ryan Day and Mark Pantoni and these guys, they just got to keep hustling and finding these guys that are stars that want to play at a higher level. Because there's kids that they're MAC kids, they're little kids. Oh, what a shot! 3-pointer, Ohio State, 69-66. The chat is going wild. Great shot. This is actually great. This is like we've been wanting to do a game watch. Chime in the chat. If we did a live watch party for an Ohio State football game, would you tune in, listen to a simulcast, and give our X and O dissertations? We've talked about doing that. I think it would be really fun to do that. Right now, we're kind of doing it with this basketball game. Obviously, this is a lot less pressure. I think basketball is just kind of like a nice little hors d'oeuvre or side dish compared to football. Football, I know that people usually have a lot more anxiety and intensity, because it's like, there's one game a week, and if we lose, it is a big deal. Like, when you watch a basketball game, nobody really cares until the tournament. But so we're getting a lot of love on that. So appreciate you guys. And also, what questions do you guys have? A lot of you guys are regulars on here. Appreciate you guys. Any questions you have as we head into winter conditioning? This next week is actually huge for the potential shifts on the coaching staff, because there is the AFCA, the American Football Coaches Association convention. It happens in Charlotte this week. That is a time where there is a ton of movement. Go ahead, Nevada.
I was just going to say, I think I'm ahead of you guys on the thing, so I can actually predict the future for you in terms of what's going to happen.
Go ahead and do it, because I'm literally watching the stream on my computer, so you're probably like 5 minutes ahead of me. So
yeah, 40 seconds to go. Ohio State's up 3. Purdue's got the ball, dribbling up into the court. They throw into that big guy that looks kind of weird, the Ete guy.
Eddie.
Oh, yep. Eddie, scores. Makes it 69-68. Oh, and I'm not sure if they called a foul as well. I think that, or they gave him the timeout. Oh, no, they gave him the timeout. So Ohio State is up 1 with 28 seconds to go, and Purdue just called timeout. Ohio State's got the ball.
I was like, are you going to say, like, there's a technical foul and they get 3 free throws, and now they're up 7 with 28 seconds to go? That'd be great.
Yeah, nothing that good, but yeah.
Ohio State forgot their jerseys in the locker room, and they got 2 technical shots, so they lose. Like the A&M manager. Can you imagine that? Oh my God.
Well, I've seen guys do that before. I've seen guys. We had a guy on our high school team that the coach sent him in, and he tears off his things, and he didn't have his basketball shorts on underneath his sweats, which was kind of embarrassing. Didn't live that one down for a while. Yeah.
I mean, that's like a nightmare. Like, that's one of those things you just never anticipate. All right, let me see. What do we got? Strength and conditioning needs to be modernized. See, that's something that is like one of those wild things that it just pops up. And again, like, I know that we had injuries this year, and it's harder when the injuries are your premier guys, when it's Jackson Smith and Jigba. Because this is a good one. I'm going to put this one up on the screen, actually, as we leap through the Devin Brown highlight tape. Let me see.
And I'll be calling the basketball game here as we go. 28 seconds to go. Ohio State has the ball, up 69-68. Ohio State player's got a great afro right there. Number 14's a terrific afro.
Terrific. Bringing it back.
It's
the old Jack Tatum afro, huh?
That was, oh no, they got it stolen. Ball stolen. Oh no, Purdue's got the ball down 1. Oh no, Purdue's got the ball. Oh no, Purdue's got the ball. 17 seconds to go, and they just called timeout. Oh no, that was not good. That
No.
that was not
They
good.
sold it on the inbound?
Yeah, they went to the corner and he went back and he just was slow, just like that was not good. I mean,
Man,
you
that
throw it to the corner and then it's like, dude, just not super,
17 seconds
super.
left. They gotta dial up that Jim Knowles defense and get a stop here.
I bet you they're going to go into Eddie. That's what I'm going to say. I'm going to predict they're going to go into Eddie.
They're
Eddie,
gonna
the
go.
7'4" guy.
They're gonna go into Cousin Eddie. So I'm gonna break a little bit of news. So tomorrow, for you members of BuckeyeScoop.com, I'm gonna start a thread after this. We have 3 very special guests on the SWO tomorrow. So I'm gonna kick Nevada to the curb in favor of Brandon Ennis, JJ Smith, and Carnell Tate. So I'm gonna have a 15-star podcast tomorrow. Really excited. They're all down in San Antonio. So I'm going to start a thread. So if you guys have questions for the young superstars, one of which will actually be here next week. Carnell is going to enroll early. Brandon has to finish out his year at American Heritage. And then JJ Smith is only a junior at Chaminade Madonna. So we're going to have a 15-star podcast tomorrow.
Hold on, basketball game going back at 69-68. 17 seconds to go. They inbounds. Purdue's got the ball. Go to Jimmy Chitwith out there. Oh, they're going to Eddie. Oh, it's back to Jimmy Chitwith. Three-pointer. Good for Purdue. They're up 2. So Ohio State's going to call a timeout. Now I'm sure they're going to call timeout. Oh, no, they're not calling timeout. They're bringing it up. Now they're probably going to call it. Yeah, timeout. Timeout. 6.4 seconds to go. Down by 2 points. They managed to go from up 3 to down 2 in about 21 seconds to go. The good news for everybody out there that's within the sound of my voice is it doesn't matter whether we win or lose this game. That's the good news about college basketball. Like if you win,
really doesn't.
It's great, and if you lose, it just doesn't matter. So hey.
Yeah, this one won't sting as bad as the the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl. So.
Yeah, the Peach Bowl hurt a little bit more than this. I think I'll be able to sleep tonight, regardless of what happens at the end of this game, for sure.
So, but this is a great question because I get this a lot about the strength and conditioning program while they're in a timeout. Nevada, does Mickey Marotti need to be fired, and do we need to bring in some whiz kid strength and conditioning to deal with soft tissue injuries, or are we doing okay? And do injuries happen because it's football?
I think injuries happen because of football, and I actually thought that we, physically did not look out of place against Georgia. Now, I think Georgia's kind of the pinnacle of college football from a physical standpoint. Ohio State, 6 seconds to go, down 2, has the ball now, no more timeouts. They bring it in. Oh, they got it. Here we go. He sets up. Oh no. Oh, he sets. Oh, no, not a very good set. Oh, he throws it up. Oh, that was the end of the game. What a terrible possession. Ohio State lost, but it doesn't matter.
It really
Take
doesn't.
Heart. It doesn't
Take
matter.
heart.
Boy, that last possession was
Holy cow!
Good.
Oh my God, that's the shot they got off. Wow.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna delete this tonight. If you guys need to cheer up, stay on Buckeyes. I just put on the Brandon Ennis highlight tape, so you guys can get juiced up for the podcast tomorrow with Showtime Ennis and the South Florida Express kids. So I'm excited about them. I think this kid is one of the most exciting recruits that we've gotten in some time. This kid is a bad man, Brandon Bad Man Ennis. You give him the ball, he's gonna kill somebody. He's gonna run somebody over. He's gonna dunk on somebody. Really a great kid. Really a fun kid to cover, and a kid that is a monster on the field. A kid that I think could easily be our number 3 receiver next year, and that's crazy. But hey, screw it. I'm gonna go out there and say it. I hope he starts as our slot guy. So strength and conditioning wise, it's interesting because Mickey's been taking a lot of heat with Jackson Smith and Jigba being dinged up, missing time. It just seems like we were snake bit this year. We had a lot of guys miss time. It was really weird. But I worked with Mickey obviously, and I always look at like how many games do we miss from an offensive line perspective, and it's almost crazy how well trained our guys are. Because in 12 we didn't miss a single snap from our starters due to injury. This year, outside of Matt Jones, really healthy. I think DeJuan missed a game. But these seasons are long. The games are hard. The practices are hard. I like what Mickey does. I know that we are incredibly modern with a lot of the things that we do in terms of tracking these guys and tracking their GPS and seeing how many miles they get and how many reps they get. I mean, it's almost insane how much data we collect now on these kids because they all run around with these catapult shirts on underneath their pads so they can calculate how far they run and how much they've been hit, and they got sensors in their helmets, and it's almost like too much because I think that they get a little egg-headed sometimes to say, oh well, this guy can't run or this guy can't bench today and this guy can't squat today because he's done all this running. But I don't know. I think Mickey he's the godfather of strength and conditioning. I think he's actually a lot more progressive than people give him credit for. I don't think we miss that many games because of an injury. Obviously, losing Jackson was painful. I will say I did not agree with bringing him back. I thought it was incredibly stupid to bring him back for games like Toledo and Iowa where you really don't need a superstar wide receiver because if you score 10 points against Iowa, you're going to win. If you score, 28 against Toledo, which you should do with your backups, you're going to win. So I have no idea why they dressed him for those games. I would have put him in bubble wrap till the Michigan game and then hopefully had him for the playoffs. But obviously that wasn't in the cards. They dressed him twice. He got hurt twice, which I thought was incredibly stupid. But, what do I know? Nevada, was this year with the injuries and being snake bit, do you think that was something that was just abnormal, or do you think that's a sign of our training? Or if you're Ryan Day and you're in his shoes, would you make a change in the strength and conditioning department?
No, I think it's math. I think it's math. I think a certain percentage of guys get hurt every year, and there's those certain years where you just have a increased number of kind of nagging injuries, and with Trey having the plantar, and Jackson Smith-Jigba having the bulky hamstring, and Mayan getting the bad ankle. I just think it's stuff happens. Football's a physical game. Things happen sometimes, and sometimes teams just seem to dodge every possible injury. Or I'll look at the NFL right now. The Minnesota Vikings, I think they have a negative, like the opponents have scored more points than the Vikings have, but they've won like 11 games. Sometimes everything just kind of breaks your way, and other times just things break away from you. And I think for Ohio State, that's what it is from a strength and conditioning standpoint. Mickey's so progressive, so cutting edge, so well regarded within the strength and conditioning community, that no, I really don't think it's that. I think it was just one of those seasons. It was unfortunate. It was sad. If we have Jackson Smith and Jigba, do I think we beat Georgia badly? I think we beat them by 3 touchdowns with Jackson Smith and Jigba, but we didn't. So, sad panda. Got to go on for 2023. Very excited about Brandon Ennis. As you said, Brandon Ennis is a bad man. There's a few guys that you look at coming out of high school, the wide receiver position, and you go, this looks like a guy who can come in and step in and help us day one. And that's very few guys. He's one of those guys. So next year, that embarrassment of riches at wide receiver with Julian Fleming and Emeka and Marvin Harrison just got more embarrassing because Brandon Ennis can play, and it's going to be really hard to keep him off the field because he's gonna demand attention from opposing defenses, and he's gonna be a perfect guy that you can put in the slot or any of the 3 wide receiver positions and just wreak havoc.
Yeah, I think he's just got a nasty disposition. He's a guy that you have to be a man to play in the slot because you go in the slot, you're going to get your head knocked off a few times. You run across the middle. He's not scared of anything. He's not scared of anybody. He can go in and block. He's a willing blocker. He's a tough kid. He's in my dreams of what we have coming back, like to have Marvin and Emeka as our 2 outside guys and Brandon Ennis working the slot. That's about as good as it gets, and that's why I'm really excited because without Jackson, we ran Emeka in the slot, Julian out of the Z a lot, but I really think Emeka would be a fantastic Z just because he's a guy that he's got burners, he can get behind guys. We missed that this year. We missed being able to stretch the defense because Emeka had to play the slot this year, and I think Jackson was better suited for the slot. Jackson was probably the best slot receiver we've ever had at Ohio State. 2 years ago was magnificent in the bowl game. But I think that, Brandon can be that guy, and he's a guy that being a freshman, he's not going to require the volume of targets that Marvin's going to need and Mecca, but he could really, get off because I mean no one's gonna be worried about Brandon Ennis if he's playing slot for us. People are gonna be worried about Marvin. He's gonna get the double team. So when you're Brandon and you used to be the high school guy that gets double teamed every play, all of a sudden you're gonna be singled up versus a nickel or heaven forbid a linebacker or a safety. Like they're not gonna be able to cover Brandon. So it'll be really interesting to see what they do with him. Obviously, I think that Carnell starts on the outside. He could work into the mix. Obviously Julian Fleming's back. Julian will obviously play a lot. He played a lot this year. Started most of the games this year. So it's going to be a deep room. It's a room where, can we go more 4 wide receivers? Do we work in Cade? We're going to lose Mitch Rossi. So it'll be interesting to see if they go with Cade, Joe Royer. If they do as much 2 tight end stuff without Mitch Rossi being there. Mitch Rossi was really a unique talent in terms of his ability to block, play that wing position, stepped in and played a lot of tight end when Cade was out. One thing that people don't really talk about the Sugar Bowl is we were really short at tight end. Cade got hurt. We're playing Joe Royer against Georgia. Joe didn't play all year. So you got a guy who's a really talented kid who literally went through hell with his mom passing away in the middle of the season. It's just like a tragic situation. So he was kind of out of it all year. Obviously, I completely understand that. Wasn't practicing, wasn't with the team. Was on the report as unavailable for most of the year. And then, against Georgia, he's in there because G. Scott's down, Kate Stover's hurt. So you're real short there, and you got a kid that hadn't played all year playing the biggest game of the year versus the best team in the country. So he's a kid that, and he made a catch early. I think that it wasn't fair to him, some of the situations he got to put in terms of pass protection, because he hadn't played all year and he's got to go pass protection against Georgia in the Peach Bowl. And that I didn't think that was one of Ryan Day's finest moments when he had him out there. I'd have probably put Josh Fryer out there or done something where you didn't have to put Joe Royer, who's an athletic receiving tight end, in a situation where he has to pass block against the Georgia skill edge guy. I don't think that's a good matchup for Ohio State. And anyways, and let alone when Joe's is rusty as he was, because he had really he's had a bad year from what went on with his mom, and God bless his mom. And I think that Joe is a kid that could easily be a superstar at Ohio State with his ability. You got to remember, Kevin Wilson had to make the call to take him over Luke Lachey, who's Jim Lachey's son. Jim Lachey is the color commentator for Ohio State football, and Jim Lachey is one of the greatest human beings, one of the finest gentlemen, one of the nicest guys I've ever been around. And that guy is on the team flight with Paul Keels every single flight. So, Kevin Wilson's going to look at him and say, yeah, Joe Royer was better than your son. So there had to be a significant gap there when he made that call, and he didn't take the legacy kid. So, but Nevada, in terms of our tight end room, our offense, Cade, what do you project out of those guys, especially if Cade returns? This could be a pretty deep room, in my opinion.
Well, let me ask you, first off, does Mitch Rossi have any more eligibility left?
I think he's done. I'm not sure if he has a 6-year. Again, that's something I should know, but I don't. I'm going to be honest.
Don't they all get a COVID year back?
That's the thing. They all have 6 years. So it's some of these guys are coming back, and one guy from Oregon got 9 years. He got his 9th year. So I don't know. I would if Mitch came back, I would cry tears of joy, because that kid played one of the greatest games, one of the most unsung games you've ever seen against the Georgia Bulldogs. And I'd make him a captain, and I can't speak highly enough about that kid, because he was balling against the Georgia Bulldogs, man.
Yeah, I think that's something we got to check on. Let's check on Rossi's eligibility, because again, that would be another one that we're just spitballing here, but that would be another one where if he announced back, I think people would be like, "Oh, that's great, Mitch Rossi's come back," and like you said, we'd be having a party here. So that would be a fun one. But with this COVID eligibility, it's going to take a couple of years to kind of sort through all these 5th and 6th and 7th and 8th year guys coming back and getting extra time. So I count nobody out, because there's a lot of eligibility floating around right now.
Yeah, Rossi's the kind of guy that he'd go to the Patriots, play 10 years, he'd be like a Nate Ebner, a guy like, Nate was a guy that most people didn't even know existed until he got drafted. in the 6th round by Belichick, and then he ended up having a fantastic career, multiple Super Bowl winner, multiple extensions. I think he just finished up after 10 years in the league. That's the kind of guy Mitch Rossi will be. Mitch Rossi's a guy, fullbacks are kind of like dinosaurs. There's just none of them anymore. And then you get a guy that can play fullback, play tight end, great special teams guy, a guy that potentially could have had two first downs on fake punts had we executed them correctly. Just really a great player, a guy that I keep getting crazy about it, but he really, really played a great game against Georgia. And we're going to get that all 22 film in, and I'm going to point out some of the plays he made, and you'll be like, holy cow, this kid was balling. And he wasn't just like blocking these guys. He's put these guys in the dirt, these Georgia Bulldogs. So it was something pretty outstanding. Any of you guys that have questions, keep pouring them on in here. Appreciate you guys being on here right now. Nevada, as we get into the winter, what, if any, coaching staff changes could you see? Again, I mentioned the AFCA conference is coming up in the next week or so. Last year at this time, we still had Kerry Combs on the staff. We still had Al Washington on the staff. I think that one of the things that Ryan Day does is he lets the assistant coaches go to that convention, walk around wearing their Ohio State logo as they potentially shop for and interview for jobs. Just because, I think it's a lot easier to find a job when you have a job. So they walk around in their Ohio State polos and they talk to, like Kerry Combs obviously talked to Luke Fickell. Luke Fickell had a spot for him. Al, obviously, the Notre Dame spot. Because Jim Knowles got hired in December, and then there was a lot of questions about the kind of the gyrations behind the scenes as well. Does Kerry Combs stay on as a corner coach? What's it mean for Al Washington? Is he going to be the linebackers coach? Is he going to be defensive tackles coach while Larry stays the full D-line coach? There were just a lot of things going on last year. It ended up that a lot of the guys got cleaned out, and it ended up being Larry Johnson is the only guy standing defensively. But in your opinion, what could you see happening out of this conference? Are there any guys you could see moving on? Obviously we mentioned Tony Alford potentially. Again, I think us not getting your running back was something that Ryan Day was not happy with that behind the scenes. But are there any guys that you see that could be worrisome? And who are some guys that you would target if guys did move on? He just rang off. Okay, I'm looking at you guys. CJ Hicks, a lot of CJ Hicks chatter. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about CJ. I think CJ is a guy that could really do some damage on defense. I think he's a guy that's a fantastic player. He's a guy that I thought would have played more this year. Nevada, talking about CJ Hicks right now. Your thoughts on CJ? Again, he's a guy I thought would have played more, been a special teams demon, didn't really play much. But your thoughts on CJ Hicks?
Could not be more excited about a player than I am about CJ Hicks. I mean, him and Styles are I just think they're the exact type of players that you need in the modern defenses to combat these modern spread offenses. Those guys that can run, that can cover, that can stay in the box, that can blitz, that can do it all. CJ is one of those guys. Love him as a player. Expect big things out of him. I think he's going to be one of those guys that people tend to forget about a little bit because, came in highly touted, didn't really have, much run this year for the OSU defense, but I'm expecting big things out of him next year. And I think he's going to take a huge leap into not only the Ohio State psyche, but I think the national psyche. I think he's that good, and I think he'll make that much of an impact.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that he's a guy that, we got a lot to be excited about. Now, again, how is he affected if Tommy comes back? Is he a guy that thought Tommy's out and he waltzes in and starts at the mic this year? I don't know. Now, do I care? I also don't care. Because, again, if you can get Tommy back, then you just let everything else fall where it is. Because, I think that, if Tommy comes back and there's guys that were mentally projecting they were going to stay or start, I think that you just got to deal with that. That's the modern thing. When I was a freshman, a true freshman, I backed up Shane Olivier at right tackle. Shane was a fourth-year senior. He didn't have the option of coming back. There was no COVID year. There was no extra time. For those of you tuned into YouTube right now, this is Jelani Thurman. Other than Brandon Ennis, this is my favorite. This is easily my favorite recruit in the class. He is a tight end, fantastic player. But I don't know. Like I think a guy that would be interesting to see if Tommy does take off is Cody Simon. Is Cody Simon a guy that potentially looks like getting into the portal? Again, this is pure speculation, but again, I've been in this as being in their shoes and kind of projecting. Okay, this guy had a great year. He's going to go to the league, go to the draft. Then he comes back all of a sudden. For some of these guys, why fight that fight when you don't have to, when you can go transfer to? Because Cody Simon could start at pretty much any program in the country. But if he's behind Steele and Tommy, then he's not going to start here. So does he want to be a rotational guy in a 2 linebacker defense, or does he want to go start at basically 110 other programs? So again, that's pure speculation. I have no insight on Cody Simon actually thinking like that, but I've just lived it, and I know how these kids are. These kids all want to play in the league, and the only way you get to the league is you have to actually play. So, but Nevada, we got few more questions. Let me see what we got. Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, Cody Simon as well dip. Jack Sawyer is a guy who's one of the polarizing guys now. Do you see an open competition at defensive end? Not impressed with Sawyer. What do you think needs to happen at defensive end, Nevada? I think that we have the 2 5-star DNs in JT Tuimoloau, and then we also have Jack Sawyer. What do you think needs to come on in terms of their progression, their growth? I know I personally think it's very unfair to compare them to Nick and Joey Bosa and Chase Young, because those guys are generational Ohio State, Hall of Fame, if not NFL Hall of Fame type talents. But what do you believe is the evolution of JT and Jack as we go into year 3, which is a year, which potentially for a guy like JT could be his last year at Ohio State?
Well, I mean, look, you have to start from the basic adage of that players get better. The best thing about sophomores is they become juniors, and for I know it's unfair to compare him to somebody like a Chase Young, but Chase Young really wasn't very good his freshman year, and then jumped up, had like 10 sacks this sophomore year, was real good player, and then went to superhuman his junior year. Unblockable, top of the draft. And so I think with JT and Jack, like, do we need them to jump up to unblockable superhuman? Well, if they just improve, they're going to be a lot better than they were this year. And you're talking about 2 guys that are widely regarded as maybe the 2 best defensive ends in the country in that recruiting class. And they've shown flashes. They've made plays. They've been close. They've been there, but it hasn't just all clicked together in every game. But, I really think it's going to. I think you're going to see a similar type of trajectory. Again, we hate comparing them to the Chase Youngs, to the Bosas, but I think they're going to have those 2 guys are going to step forward and have those types of seasons. And then OSU defense is going to look completely different when that starts to happen. So what do I expect to happen? I expect that to happen. I would say mark that down and hold me to it. I think that those are 2 of the surest bets that you're going to have on players that you're ever going to see in the 2023 season is JT and Jack Sawyer to have big years, breakout years, and live up to those lofty 5-star billings. I really think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I agree. I think that one of the things that people forget is that this time last year, a lot of people were down on Zach Harrison. Zach Harrison was a guy, obviously, when you have that 5-star tag, the expectations are already almost unreachable, especially when you come in after Chase Young and Joey and Nick Bosa in succession. And, he's a kid that, people gave him the look like Tarzan, plays like Jane, unproductive, whatever. He's a great kid. I mean, he's one of the nicest kids you'd ever meet in the world. But he really took a huge step this year in terms of production, in terms of, his overall stock in the NFL. I thought he had a great year. And it was one of the weirdest things ever is Ryan Day has a penchant for naming kids captains their junior year, which I think isn't fair. And I think it's something that sometimes can hang these kids out a little bit, because Zach Harrison is a guy who's named captain as a junior, much like Taraji Mitchell last year, and then was not named captain as a senior. And 3 of the guys they picked were Court Williams, Tyler Friday, and Cam Babb. And obviously, we know Cam Babb's story. He's had a bunch of ACL tears. But, like Tyler Friday is a kid that doesn't play at all. And Court Williams is a guy that didn't play at all. And then he got hurt. And, so then he really didn't play at all. And then, so Zach Harrison is kind of just like from the emotion of being a junior captain, potentially being a two-time captain at Ohio State, which is a huge honor, to not being a captain your senior year, is something it's really strange. And I think Zach handled that well. I think that he took it in stride. I think he's a kid that just all he did was produce, and he really had a great year. I think that his production in a strange way almost hindered him, because I think Larry played him too much. Because there were times where I'd be like, God, rotate him out and put Jack Sawyer in, or put one of the other ends in, because he'd get tired towards the end, but he was still productive despite playing 65 plays a game. And I just thought that, if I could have, one criticism of Larry Johnson, or, my biggest criticism by far, is his rotation was insane, because, we had guys like Mike Hall playing 15 plays, even though I know he was dinged up. We had Tyleek playing 10 plays. We had Jack Story playing like 17 plays. And then you'd have Zach Harrison playing like 60 plays. And I'm like, in my mind, and even JT Tuimoloau would be playing 55 plays, 60 plays. I think that, it's better to spread those guys out and have each DN play 40 plays than have two play 60 to one play 17. Because I know those guys get tired. I would see it on film where they just be getting beat down, especially in the second half. And I'd be like, I think that, freshening those guys up and having a better rotation would really help, especially when you play teams like Michigan that run the ball and try to kill you every play. Like that is really tough to withstand for 60 plays. And most of these guys can't do it. And that's part of the reason why we struggled towards the end of the game against the run, is because these guys, I thought the rotation was poor. Nevada, your comments on the rotation, I know that it's probably going to be corrected just because, Javonte Jean-Baptiste hit the portal. We're going to lose Zach. We're going to lose Jerron Cage, Teron Vincent. There's a lot of these older guys that are moving on to the end of football or the NFL in certain cases and scenarios. Your thoughts on the defensive line rotation going into 2023?
Well, just the defensive rotations in general. Forget the line. The defensive rotations in general were just very confusing the whole year. And you take a guy like Javonte Jean-Baptiste. I mean, they played him a lot in the Peach Bowl, and then he goes in the portal. So it wasn't even like they were invested in the future. So look, I give the defensive coaches the benefit of the doubt. They see a heck of a lot more than we do by a factor of about 100. They've got their very lively, depending on this stuff. But been watching OSU football for a long time, so you kind of get a rhythm of things and you get kind of an idea of how things are being done. The rotations were weird. Let's just, there's no other way to put it. The rotations were weird, and hopefully they're less weird in the future. But if they're not, then just at least be playing good, solid, fundamental defense, and don't leave questions. But yeah, there were some questionable decisions this year, across the board, and so I hope they get that fixed out. And from a coaching staff perspective, I think it's an open question of, is it the end of Larry Johnson's tenure at Ohio State right now? I'm not wishing that to happen. I think he's one of those guys that you hated when he coached against you, and you loved him when he's here. Certainly love him when he's here, and love the job he's done. But this year wasn't one of his great defensive line hauls, and the defensive line production wasn't great either. Does that mean hashtag fire Larry? Absolutely not. Larry's earned the right to leave on his own terms whenever he wants and stay as long as he absolutely wants. And I'm fully on board with that. But I think it's certainly something to keep an eye on as an Ohio State fan. Just keep in the back of your mind that could be something that's coming down the pike sooner than later.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that with Larry, he's been in the game for a long time. I think that swinging and missing on the three premium ends, with Keon Keeley, Mateo Uiagalelei, Damon Wilson, like we whiffed on all three of those guys that we led at some point. I don't think we ever led for Keon, but Mateo we definitely led for. Was Larry's age used against him? That's something people probably talk about for the last 5 to 10 years. Where is he going to retire? Is he going to retire? Is he going to retire? Obviously, Tosh Dupoy, who's the defensive line coach at Oregon, much younger. And I mean, again, like Mateo, he grew up an Oregon fan, a USC fan. His dad had a very tight relationship with Larry Johnson Jr., the running back for the Chiefs, did some bodyguard work for him. So there are all these different layers with Mateo. But, I mean, for me, when kids, let's just lay it out. Like when kids are mostly obsessed about the depth chart and how quickly they can play, I can't imagine a cleaner depth chart than Ohio State's defensive ends right now. Because after JT and Jack, there really isn't anything that's been productive. So you're thinking, Caden Curry, obviously that you would project he would be up next because he got some burn this year. But man, if you're Mateo, like man, I'd be the number 4 DN, which means I'm playing next year and I'm rotating in the second I get to campus. And for all these 5-star guys, you'd think that would be enough for them to lock in and want to be Ohio State Buckeyes. Because if my kid ends up being a 5-star defensive end, I want to know who's coaching them and how good's the offense. Because if the offense is really, really good, then you're going to get a lot of pass rush opportunities. And what makes you a high draft pick? Getting a lot of sacks, getting 10, 15 sacks. And, when you're up 49-0 for most of the game because Ryan Day is just pouring points onto everybody replay, then you get a lot of pass rush opportunities, man. And I think that that's one of the things that this defense and the defensive coaches in recruiting can sell. And again, it was unfortunate we didn't get any of the 3 quote unquote big fish. But we did get Josh Mickens late out of Indiana. He's a kid that I think actually has looked fantastic down at the Army All-American game so far. So he might end up being as good as any of them. So sometimes you never know. Sometimes, the guy you get from Indiana, which isn't as sexy as getting a guy from Tampa or a guy from California, kid from Georgia, he might end up being just as good as any of them. So who knows? Again, it's circumstance and it's how do they take advantage of the opportunity. But, I'm super excited to see what we get out of JT and Jack in 2023 when they are the actual starters. There's no more rotating behind Zach Harrison and Javante and Jerron Cage and all these guys. I want to see Mike Hall get a full cadre of snaps. I want to see him play 45 snaps instead of 15. I want to see Tyleek play. If we can get 30 out of Tyleek, I think that'd be great. I still think he needs to get in better shape. I still think he needs to put the spoon down and run a little bit more because he's a nose guard. But I mean, when you're that type of body type and that's kind of your game, you're never going to be a 60 snap guy just because that's just not what your gig is. They got to rotate you in and out because you're going to get tired. But man, these guys have such an opportunity. I know that in these guys' dreams, they want to be 3 and out. They want to go pro. They want to have big years and have at least have the option. Like I talk to these guys that are going into their 3rd year, I'm like, look, you want to put up a big year, so you at least have the option to consider going pro. You don't have to go pro, but it's nice to be thought highly enough of that you could go pro and get drafted in the first 2 rounds. So, it'll be interesting to see how these guys reshape their bodies, how they grind in the winter, how they kind of explode into the spring. I can already see the projections when we have 2 new tackles starting versus Jack and JT. Jack and JT are an absolute load for any tackles, but when you have 2 new guys starting, if we get Jared Kingston to play left tackle, if we have Donnie out at left tackle, if we have Josh Fryer, those guys are going to win more than they're going to lose, because those guys are 2 really good pass rushers, and I think when you've got new tackles coming in, it's going to be tough. So Nevada, we've been going for about an hour. Going to wrap this thing up here. Big 15-star podcast potentially tomorrow. Again, tentatively going to have Ennis Tate and JJ Smith on our podcast tomorrow. So if you have questions and you are a member of BuckeyeScoop.com, I'm going to start up a thread. I want to hear what you have to say to those kids. I'll ask the questions that are within the thread. If you're not a member of BuckeyeScoop.com, don't know what you're waiting on because football is absolutely crazy right now. The portal stuff, the recruiting stuff, the coaching news, it's nonstop. Nevada, any closing remarks to that regard? Because I know you've been breaking a lot of the portal stuff. But just what are your closing remarks from this wonderful hour that we've had tonight with the people that have joined us?
No, it just, I'm just kind of blown away about how active our board is right now. I mean, our board, usually when the season ends, the board kind of slows down in activity, and that's, I've been doing these boards for a long time, but our board is cooking. I mean, it's like you post a reply and then you go on and there's 4 new questions, and it's just crazy time. And like you said, I think it's a combination of, early entrants, portal, recruiting. It just never stops. College football's changing. A lot of the changes I don't like, But the one thing about college football that's more true than ever is it's becoming a 24/7, 365 type of affair. And we got you covered at BuckeyeScoop.com, and just appreciate everybody's support. So we'll see you on the message board.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys. These podcasts are a blast. I totally agree. I love Quasi Fresh. That's great. We could have some swagger on our defense, like some prime Richard Sherman's our team. If we could find a prime Richard Sherman, look out, because one of the things we haven't had this past year is production at corner. So, but again, I'm going to wrap this thing up. Again, I appreciate you guys so much for tuning into these. I have a blast dealing with everybody. Love your questions. I love your energy. Shout out where you guys are from in this chat and in the comments. Again, I think you guys, again, appreciate you guys. You guys have a lot of options for entertainment. We have a blast on here, and I always love getting to know you guys. If you are not members of BuckeyeScoop.com, I'm telling you, it is for what you get. I mean, it is the most entertaining, hilarious, fun, informative experience on online, social media, Ohio State football. I mean, we talk about everything. We break a lot of news. Obviously, the coaching staff, I think it's still fluid. I think there's still going to be some moves that are made. We got people that potentially could be declaring for the draft. Again, when Stan Drayton left for the Chicago Bears after Mike Weber signed the day after signing day, it just proves that it never really stops. There's never a completely locked in coaching staff. I think that guys are as faithful as their options. I think some guys are, politely asked to leave, and Ryan Day lets him save face. Urban let him do the same thing and go out the door elsewhere. So it's going to be fascinating to watch. And again, all of the news is on BuckeyeScoop.com. Transfer portal tackles coming in, transfer portal linemen coming in. There's a lot of scuttlebutt going on. We've hosted tight ends. I'm sure we'll host some defensive players, corners. We've got a lot of visits coming in for these kids that are portal guys. And again, it's all going to freshen up again after spring ball, because you're going to reset the deck, and there's going to be more kids that hit the portal, and it is just absolutely crazy. So we're going to be shopping a lot at Ohio State, looking for some key pieces that we can plug in for a year and play. And that's kind of like why this thing literally never sleeps. Like the Buckeye Scoop message board is literally like the Cosmopolitan in Las Vegas. It never is dull. It's always on fire. There's always fun. There's always happening stuff going on. So that's what it's like. So we appreciate you guys tuning in this tonight. Again, Ennis, Tate, JJ Smith tomorrow. Scoop World Order. Get your questions in. I can't wait to talk to those kids. They're fantastic. They've been tearing it up in San Antonio. JJ's down there for the Junior National Combine. So it's going to be a fantastic get. So I hope you guys have a great night. Thank you so much for tuning in. In the comments down below, I want you guys to write, who is your breakout player for 2023? We're on to 2023. 2022 was a good year, but we need a great year. Who's your breakout? You know who I'm going to go with? Brandon Ennis. I think you put him in the slot next to Marvin and Emeka. That kid is going to eat. So I want to hear your breakouts. And also, shout out where you're from, man. I love hearing where you guys are from. We got guys from all over the world watching this podcast. Not even kidding. It cracks me up when I see that there's people in India, there's people in Europe, there's people in South America, all over the place watching this thing. So I appreciate you guys. So shout out where you're from. Canton, Ohio, Naples, Florida. Let's hear it all. So thank you guys. I hope you guys have a great rest of your night. Thank you so much, Buckeye Nation, and thank you, Scoop family. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Go Bucks. Spring ball is going to be here before you know it. Let's get it. Have a nice night.